a.m. We'll just accept the recording. Good morning, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. My name is Barbara Dubrain, and I am the chairperson of the Committee of Adjustment. And I call the meeting to order again at 9 a.m. The committee members include members of council. However, we sit at this table as the Committee of Adjustment and not as members of council. Our jurisdiction lies solely with matters of consents and minor variance applications. The secretary of this committee is Alicia Milne. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variances and consents within the Township of Southgate and is held under the provision of the Planning Act 1990. This hearing will be in accordance with the Provincial Planning Act, the Municipal Act, and the Township of Southgate official plan. Could I get confirmation of the agenda? A mover and a seconder, please. Jason and Monica. Be it resolved that the committee confirm the agenda as presented. Any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, hearing none. I'll remind you if any arise throughout the course of the meeting, you can declare it at any time. Moving down. Adoption of the minutes. Be it resolved that the committee approve the minutes from the May 24, 2023 meeting as presented. A mover and a seconder, please. Martin and Joan. Any errors or omissions? Any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. I will ask that anyone speaking about an application to state their full name and address for the record. Please keep all remarks relevant to the consent or minor variance application before us, as the Committee of Adjustment has no jurisdiction on any other matters. Any materials submitted to the committee for viewing will remain the property of the Committee of Adjustment and will be available for public viewing in the application file and may be placed online. Please direct all remarks and questions to the chair of the committee. This will enable the hearing to be conducted in an organized manner. And we have a file B423, B523, and B623, David Rogers. The purpose is to sever 3 residential lots, back lots with approximately 50 meters of frontage and are between 4,300 meters squared and 4,600 meters squared in area. The retained parcel will have 177 meters of frontage and be approximately 39 hectares in area. The effect would be to create 3 new residential backlots within the inland lake shoreline designation of Wilder Lake. The location of the subject land is Concession 22, Part Lot 4, Geographic Township of Egremont. The lands are further described as 263597 Southgate Road 26. Is there a request for deferral or withdrawal of an application? I'm going to guess that's Alicia.
There were none received.
Great, we can carry on then. May I please have clarification that the sign was posted in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yes, the sign was posted and notice was mailed out in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Alicia. Is the applicant in attendance, and if so, would they care to come forward to present their case?
Good morning. I am the applicant's agent, Vaishnav Mohantan with Aquesta Planning Consultants. And I'm here today representing the applicant, Mr. David Rogers, with respect to the consent applications B423, B523, and B623. So the purpose of this application is to sever 3 lots for residential development, and the subject property, which is located on Southgate Road 26, north of Wilder Lake, is approximately 42 hectares in area and contains agricultural fields, woodlands, and a wetland. The property is presently used as a recreational residence by the applicant and a hobby farm, and there will be no change in the existing use as a result of the proposal. The location of the proposed lots are in the southeastern section of the property and will be about 0.4 hectares in size each. There's currently no development concept for the proposed lots, but any future development will conform to the zoning and to the Ontario Building Code. So as part of a complete application requirements, an environmental impact study and servicing study were required to demonstrate that the proposed lots will not have a negative impact on the surrounding environment, as well as to ensure that these lots can be adequately serviced on private systems. So the findings of the environmental impact study conclude that the lots can be supported given that there's specified building envelopes put in place and setbacks to provide sufficient buffering from the wetland feature and woodlands. The environmental impact study sets out best practices and measures that ensure that wildlife is not compromised as part of this development. And these include avoiding development during mating periods, maintaining night sky protocols, and other measures to accommodate wildlife which are found in the EIS. These recommendations are to be enforced through the accompanying zoning bylaw amendment, which was considered last month. And then the servicing study determined the hydrogeological conditions of the area of the proposed lots, and they contain a bedrock that is known for its high yield of water supply. And that the servicing study also found that there's suitable area for the construction of on-site sewage systems with the capacity to support a 4-bedroom single detached dwelling that's able to comply with the Ontario Building Code. So from a planning perspective, the proposed severances represent good planning as they will bolster the housing supply within a settlement area, and they do not compromise any valuable agricultural lands and will not have a negative impact on the wetland or the surrounding environment. And as I mentioned, a zoning bylaw amendment was submitted in support of this application and was considered last month. And the point of the zoning bylaw amendment was to implement the recommendations of the EIS, which include the building envelope, setbacks, and other recommendations to mitigate any effects on the wildlife and natural environment, as well as to provide relief from the frontage and the frontage requirements for the retained parcel. So all in all, I feel that the proposal should be considered favorably. It represents sound planning principles that conforms to the provincial policy statement and the county and local official plans, and is supported by environmental and engineering studies. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And sir, I didn't get your name. I just see Questa Planning.
I'll just change my name real quick.
It's just helpful for our
Vaishnan.
Vashnan?
Yep.
Vashnan? Thank you. Thank you, sir. And thank you for your report. I will now ask the planner, Clinton Stredick, to review all comments received and present his staff report. Actually, I'm going to back up there. Are there any questions for Vashnan at this time from council? And welcome, Jim Ferguson. And that's not council. You're not members of council. Nope. No questions. Great. Clinton, over to you.
Thank you, Chair Dobreen. I'll start off with the comments that have been received. So the first comments that I have here are from the Public Works Department, indicating lot entrances will have to cut into the hill and may require more sloping or retainment of banks. This section of Southgate Road 26 is a 60km/h speed zone, so they should be aware of that. And entrances will have to be approved upon determination of the actual location for those entrances. So they'll require entrance permits from the township. The County of Grey indicate that provided no additional drainage is diverted toward the county forest, and their comments relating to the zoning bylaw amendment C623 have been addressed. County planning staff have no concerns with the subject application. The SVCA staff is of the opinion that the applications are consistent with section 3.1 of the natural hazards policies of the PPS, and that the applications are also consistent with the Grey County official plan and Township of Southgate policies for natural hazards, and they find the application acceptable. Hydro One has no concerns at this time. Enbridge Gas does have service lines running in the area, pardon me, which their standard comment is if they're in the way, you have to move them at the owner's expense to not to put too fine a point on it. We just received a comment yesterday via email from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, SON, indicating that they would like to see some sort of assessment done for these areas, because they note that it is a high potential area because of its proximity to water and that sort of thing for archaeological resources. So as a result of the late comments coming in, we've proposed a revised condition in my report. First thing, if you go up to the recommendation in my report, it's not council, it's committee. I noted it's still says council, but it should be committee. And then we've added we're going to add another clause there if the committee is agreeable, and it would specifically say that an archaeological assessment be obtained to the satisfaction of the township if it's deemed necessary by the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. So that ensures that their comments are respected, however, allows this committee to deal with the application now. So one final comment that we had is from, where's my, just one second, is from Tom and Heather Arnott. They were members of the public, and their comments related to questions regarding the hydrogeological study and the required pump tests. And we advised them that the pump tests were done when the wells were drilled at that time, and they were recorded with the well records, and therefore there was no new pump tests done on anyone's wells without their knowledge or anything like that. So that's all of the comments. And then so based on my review of the policy, as the agent Cuesta noted, that it does conform with the policy, and therefore the conditions I have are that a survey is provided, that all applicable fees and charges are paid, that a zoning bylaw amendment is passed, which it's proposed to be brought forward at next week's council, and that an entrance permit is obtained for each lot, and finally that the archaeological condition is included in that as well, that I just read out. And that's all for the comments I have.
Thank you, Clinton. Are there any? Oh, hello? Are there any other, sorry, excuse me. Do any members of the committee have any questions at this time? Martin? And then Brian.
Yeah, good morning, Clint. We talked about this at the public meeting. Nothing's changed as far as the trees and the grading towards the county, right? All that's going to be looked after in your site plans, right? Or whatever you're doing there.
Yeah, so through the chair, the zoning amendment is actually creating very small building envelopes closer to the road so that it stays away from the county forests and all of that, which are quite a ways away from that. So it should have zero impact on the county forests.
Okay. May I follow up?
Carry on.
And because those, I'm looking at the map now, the three building envelopes, as you say, are really pretty tight to the road. When you're looking at all the other dwellings around there, they're quite a ways back, especially on the inland lake side. With it being a 60, was that mentioned in the report that that could change because they are so close to the road? Would it be feasible to do a 40 or hidden driveway signs? Because you did say there was gonna be a slope on the one, being tight to the road. Would that be looked at further down?
Through the chair. That's a bit of a question for Jim.
For Jim, yeah.
He's just noted that it is a 60, so it is a reduced from the 80, like the typical 80 that someone would do on a rural road. So we've reduced those to 60. Because there is a bit of a bend earlier on in the road, we will want to make sure that the separations are appropriate for those entrances, for sight lines and that sort of thing. And as far as because there's a bit of a slope, they just have to make sure they address that slope properly, so that it's not creating a hazard or an issue that way. Those are all things that, from my understanding and talking with Jim, that they can be addressed through the permitting process, through an entrance permit. And if it does become an issue, council can look at reducing the speed limit in that area. It is a municipal road, so that would be something we would look at if it became a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Go to Brian next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things, Clinton. First of all, the county property that you're referencing, I presume that's to the north of the noted property?
That's my understanding, yes.
Well, we're a long way away from there. So anyway, that's good. The other thing is, could you expand a bit on the MDS calculations and how they were arrived at to the cattle barn to the east and the proximity to the proposed lots? You're muted, Mr. Stradwick. So
Well, to be honest, I didn't worry too much about the MDS calculations to that cattle barn, because MDS calculations are not applicable to these new lots. They're applicable to the settlement area boundary. So these lots are within that boundary. So any MDS calculation that's done for that barn to the east is done to that settlement boundary, the designation boundary for inland lakes. It's not done to these specific lots. That's how MDS works essentially. It for settlement areas it's to the settlement area boundary, not to the lot.
And so where is the settlement boundary line?
It's actually further to the edge of the lot, because there's approximately, if I look at my
Alicia, could you put up the,
this consent sketch is what.
yeah, this consent sketch, please? Doesn't want to load. Thank you.
So for these lots, the settlement area boundary actually extends past the green property line there. That's out to the east.
So closer to the barn.
Yes. And it actually, in actual fact, if I look at the designation, that barn actually might be considered to be in the settlement area boundary.
So the barn is constrained, not the
Yes.
lots.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other question, Brian? Comment? Nope, you just muted yourself.
No, not right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other questions from other committee members? I see none at this time. I did have a question. So just to clarify that the driveways, the entrance permits is a part of another process that they will have to follow, and they will have to place their entrances according to sight lines and what satisfies our Public Works Department. If they can't satisfy that, then they'll have to relocate the entrance. As far as and Clint, you may be able to address this when it comes forward in your planning, the site plans. Is there any way to register the requirement for all of the EIS recommendations, the dark sky compliant, that when the individual does purchase the lot and goes to build, that there is a record? How do we impose that?
Well, there's a number of ways. The zoning bylaw is one of the ways that's going to impose that, because when that comes forward next week, it'll have exaggerated setbacks, I'll call them. So the setback from the rear lot line, which would normally be, I'll say 7.5 meters, would be like 60 meters, so that it would push it so that they could only build towards the front in those areas. So that's one of the ways you can do that. The other thing that you can do is you can actually put dark sky wording right in the zoning that all exterior fixtures should be dark sky compliant, that sort of thing. We did that over in the subdivision on the west side of the lake. And I guess that the other piece is you could do it through some sort of development agreement if you wanted. Typically, those are not the greatest way of doing things, because they often get ignored by people, whereas the zoning hardly ever gets ignored. And so that's the preferred approach to doing that sort of thing.
So it can be addressed. I found it curious that the recommendation was to help mitigate the effects on wildlife in the back of the house, as opposed to, wildlife traveling perhaps in the front of the house or neighboring lots. So at least it's being addressed. So thank you. Are there any others in attendance that would like to speak in support of this application? Are there any others in attendance that would like to speak in opposition of this application? I'll ask the committee members if there is a requirement for more comment. Jason and then Martin. Go ahead, Jason, you can unmute.
Is that better?
That works a little bit better. Yeah, thanks.
Going back to Brian's comment with the barn there, how much is this going to constrain the local agriculture right close by? I guess that's to Clint, or for future building or anything like that? It's kind of.
I think it's already constrained and limited, but go ahead, Clinton.
Yeah, through the chair. To that point, yeah, the limiting factor when you do the MDS calculation, it is to the settlement area boundary, not to the boundary of these lots. So these lots themselves would not constrain that barn in any way, shape, or form. It would be the settlement area boundary that would be the restricting factor on that. And as I mentioned earlier, it just looking at it, it looks like the barn is just on the edge of that settlement area boundary itself. So it may already be constrained to the point of not being able to expand closer to the settlement boundary.
So, and that settlement boundary was established many years ago.
Back in about 2009.
Okay, does that answer your question, Jason?
Yeah, I kind of, yeah, that's good.
Okay, Martin? And you're muted. It's been a while since we've all been
Yeah.
on totally virtual, so I think it'll. Can
you hear me
We're
now?
gonna get that jar. We're gonna get that jar out again, and yeah.
Oh, I have that jar every day, so. Well, let's talk about constraints, Clint. Part 4, the statement of compliance, they're all the same for the 3 files. And the first one is rural inland lakes, hazard lands, but there's talk about constraint. In D, following constraint areas in Southgate official plan, and it says primary aggregate resource areas. Can you explain that to me? Since we're talking about constraints here, why was that checked off? Just more my curiosity than anything.
Go
Sure.
ahead, Clinton.
So as you may recall, the parcel is larger that right now is larger than just these 3 lots. It's the whole 100 acres. And that 100 acres has primary aggregate on it. Or at least it's been mapped to have primary aggregate on it, just like there's parts of the south of the lake that also have primary aggregate. One of the main reasons there's an ANSI on the south end of the lake is because it's an aggregate deposit. So the takeaway though is that the aggregate resource area is not applicable to settlement areas. Again, we're trying to keep the people in the settlement areas and the lots in the settlement areas and the agriculture and aggregates outside of the settlement areas. That's the theory. So that purple area is the settlement area boundary. And so you can see as it extends all the way into that lot to the east there. And that whole lot in the back there is aggregate resource area.
The yellow.
Yeah, it's actually rural on this particular map, but if we were to go to one of the schedules, I think it's Schedule B, it actually shows as an aggregate resource area.
Okay.
Okay, Martin?
Yeah, no, I just wondered about that. It makes sense. You know, we are looking at severed lots, but I just wondered. Thank you very much, Clinton.
No problem.
Thank you. And Clinton, to that point, then these lots, will they further restrict then the ability to remove that aggregate?
No.
Thank you. Okay. I'm wondering if we could get the revised recommendation with that additional clause that you're recommending, the exact wording, so that I can then ask for a mover and seconder to grant, refuse, or defer the application and discuss the resolution.
Yep,
Joan,
I
did you
can
have
share
a-
it here on my screen.
Thank you. Joan, did you have a question? I can't see you now, Joan, but you can unmute if you have a question.
Through the chair, thank you, Barb. I was just going to ask Clinton for the revision because I couldn't remember everything that he said. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you, Alicia. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, and I can't see everyone on the screen. So let's see if I can change my screen at all. Joan, did you have a question before
No,
I
I'll move.
ask for a mover?
No,
Oh, okay, move. So when I get there,
Mhm.
I need a mover to grant, refuse, or defer. Which are you suggesting, Joan?
oh, to grant.
To grant, thank you.
Yeah, with the
And
revision.
with the revision. I'll read it out in a moment. And a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Be it resolved that the committee receives staff report PL 2023-035 for information, that the committee consider approval of consent applications B423, B523, and B623 with the following conditions: that a survey is provided, that all fees and charges and taxes are paid, that a zoning bylaw amendment is passed to implement the consents and recommendations of the EIS, that an entrance permit is obtained for each lot, that an archaeological assessment be obtained to the satisfaction of the township if deemed necessary by the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. I would ask, before I call for the vote, is the archaeological assessment to the satisfaction of the township or to the satisfaction of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation?
Through the chair, if I could.
Yes,
I would recommend that we keep it through the township because it's our responsibility to grant these and ensure the conditions are met. It's not Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. They're providing the advice that whether or not they want to see an acceptable archaeological study done, and they have their commenting ability to review that, etc., and provide comments back to us. But ultimately, it's our decision on that matter.
thank you for explaining that, Clinton. So we have the resolution in front of us. The decision, it is to grant this application and the conditions associated with it. Are there any opposed? Alicia, if you could remove the resolution now so that I can see everyone. Are there any opposed? That is carried. The decision of the Committee of Adjustment is to grant the application. The applicant shall have 2 years in which the conditions must be met. I have a new, may I please ask all committee members in agreement to, these will be signed electronically, Alicia, as in the past. I see that is an affirmative.
Yes.
And sorry, thank you. Got it. Okay, the committee decisions may be appealed pursuant to Section 17D of the Planning Act within 20 days of the date of the notice to the Ontario Land Tribunal. I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn the meeting at 9:33 a.m. Monica and Martin. Any opposed? That too is carried. Thank you all.